Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Closing Table Podcast. Our mission statement at the Closing Table Podcast is to be the voice for real estate professionals and help raise the standard in our industry. We want to connect industry professionals by having conversations about what part each of us play in the real estate process. Our goal should always be the same, which is helping buyers and sellers get to the closing table. Our podcast is brought to you by Providence Title, bringing excellence to each real estate transaction, and the Hero Edge, helping real estate professionals realize the hero in their own story. With us today, I'm Carlos Woltmann.
And I'm Kevin Harris.
The Kevin Harris, coach.
Super excited about this. This is
I know.
awesome, man. We've been talking about this a long time.
Can I first say congratulations? You guys don't know, but this has been a goal of his to have this podcast, and we're really excited. I know it's our very first one, the best one yet. Let's go.
All right.
Awesome. I know.
Awesome. I'm super stoked. This is going to be awesome. It's been something I've been talking about, obviously, to you for years, because this is kind of how I built my business, is interacting with real estate professionals, not just realtors, but all aspects to gain a better knowledge of our business and what we do. So I think bringing this to the real estate professionals out there that are either starting or maybe they haven't, they don't know what other real estate professionals, lawyers and title companies and all that stuff, how they do the things they do and what matters to them in the real estate transaction. I think this is going to be a great podcast for that. So
I know. And listen, I'm sure if you're watching, and we appreciate it, there's millions of podcasts out there, but let me ask you, why create another one?
That's a good one. There is a million podcasts out there. There's a million real estate podcasts out there. I listen to most of them, to be honest with you. But I think for this one, I've never come across a conversation podcast that actually talks and gets in depth to the interaction between everybody in the real estate transaction. I know as a realtor for over 8 years and a realtor coach that it's bits and pieces, right? Bits of the title process, bits of the lending process. You probably know nothing about the legal side with lawyers or anything like that. And having a better knowledge of what they do allows everybody to build a team that just like the mission statement says, that allows us to actually have a great experience for the client, which is the buyers and sellers that we represent or that we're being a part of in the transaction. So I think this is going to be different in that regard. And also the fact that me and you both bring a lot to the table from different viewpoints. Obviously, most the people that know me as a realtor and a football coach and all those kind of things. But they're also a real estate coach, a business coach. But then you've been primarily on the title side, right? And so I think our conversation and then what I do in the world of business coaching and coaching around that real estate transaction led me to just think about, wow, I wish I could get this information to our people, right? The real estate professionals, because I've learned so much being in different segments of the real estate transaction. And so I don't think there's anything out there like it. I definitely think there's no one like you on air right now. Crazy. What do you say? The crazy Brazilian nut?
I know, right? I know, the number one Brazilian born title rep in Texas.
Yeah. So that's a good intro. So tell us about your background, Carlos Woltmann.
I would love to answer that. I do want to say a couple things because I think one of the goals for the podcast is to really be unique. We want to bring the good, the bad, the ugly. We don't want to just put ourselves in a box. Kevin has just years of experience. We can, there's just lots of ways for us to really bring value. And whether you are a new realtor watching or a seasoned realtor, we want to make sure that you're just getting value, something that you can use in your business every day. But a little bit about me. I mentioned I was born and raised in Brazil. I often say this, and it makes sense in my brain, right? That I'm living the dream I didn't know I had. Because my plan was not my plan from the very beginning, right? When you're born in Brazil, you don't always hear, hey, you can be and do whatever you want to be. My plan was to come to the United States, learn English, get a degree, go back and work with my dad. That's just what the plan was. And then my love.
And what does your dad do?
My dad owns still his. He would hate if I, say that out loud, but I think he is pretty much retired, semi-retired. My dad, for a majority of my grown life owned his own import and export business. So
Awesome.
yeah, which is a need to learn for me to learn English to be able to help and travel the world. But I met a wonderful Texan that kept me in Texas, and now you may say that I may have a terrible Texan accent. So.
No, we won't say that. Well, and I know a lot of people know our background, how we met, but me being a football coach, getting out of coaching here in Texas, and then getting into real estate. It wasn't too long after I got into real estate and started producing that we met. And you were my business development rep for Providence Title. And we built a relationship over 6-7 years. Yeah. And, to be able to have that partnership, not only in the real estate side, but then as I started growing my coaching business, you also leaned into that. And you've been at the back of the room a lot of times during the coaching sessions and all that. And so it's been a great experience for me to be able to grow as a business owner, as a realtor, as a coach, but then also having you beside that conversation and being able to see it. So you have a unique perspective on what we're doing. Yeah. And I think that's what makes this podcast what it's going to be, is the fact that we come from different places, but we kind of both have the same vision of what we want, which is to raise that standard and make sure that everybody is doing the things that they should be doing and that they know to do, so that they can help the buyers and sellers that are out there. Because one of the things that I say in the real estate side is the fact that, this is usually, not always, and we'll talk a lot about that through the podcast, but usually this transaction that happens in a real estate transaction is usually one of the biggest financial decisions that a buyer or seller makes, especially on the retail side, right? Mm-hmm. And investors, and in commercial, they do this, but it's still big, right? It's conversely, if you're a realtor, it's probably going to be one of the biggest transactions that you do as far as a financial transaction. Most realtors come into the space with all different backgrounds, but they don't come usually with a high sales ticket background or a high management background. So they're not used to having the potential to make what they can make in the business. And so it's a little overwhelming. And as I got into the business and I started coaching realtors, it was one of the things that I realized was that overwhelm often causes people not to act. They just kind of stand still. They have the best intentions, but they just can't get past that because there's so much they think they need to know. And they're not really looking in the spaces that they could move faster if they would just kind of get out of their own way. Yeah.
I think one thing that I want you guys to realize is there's so much passion in this room that is definitely something that's going to be unique about us. Is we're passionate about what we do. We're passionate about wanting to help people. And I intentionally did not get into a little bit as to how I got into title business. That's food for another podcast. Just like we may not quite dive into Kevin's background, but we want you to know that coaching is at the heart of everything we do and how we want to help everybody. So I for sure want to publicly say that, Kevin is my better looking American brother. So,
I don't know about that, but I consider you a brother for sure.
Tell me a little bit though, your coaching background, how has that molded into you becoming a realtor and now transitioning into really just a coach and helping realtors and helping, a little bit of our title industry and sales reps produce more?
Yeah, I think we've talked about it a lot, but when I talk to coaches and I talk to people who want to get into coaching and training, one of the things that I look for is I think people that don't have a heart or a bent for people, it's very difficult for them to, I would say, lead it, but definitely coach, because they have to have a passion to make a difference in that person's life. And so some people have that as like one of the things you've heard this, but one of my core values is to bring value to every conversation that I have. And so for me, as I got into corporate training when I was in my 20s and I eventually started my own business with my wife and then got into the ministry and then got into football coaching, private schools here in Texas, and then eventually made my way into real estate. One of the things that I recognized is that there was a common thread to the things that I did. And it was really about serving others at the highest level that I can serve them, and then helping people get to that next place. And so when it was on the football field, obviously it was the kids that were trying to either get a starting position or get better at their game or ultimately win a state championship. But it was very easy to, once I figured out that when I got into real estate, then I was doing the exact same process with buyers and sellers. I was helping them get to that next space, which was buying a house or selling a house. And then it was an easy transition to figuring out, well, that's the same thing as when a realtor comes into the space or an inspector or a lender comes into the space and they want to grow a business. The process is the same. I think that's why I truly believe that sports is one of the best learning grounds on the planet, because it teaches you some common values that you can take for the rest of your life. In my opinion, a true coach is someone who can recognize that and then see the gaps in between the people, or the process that the people are trying to get to, because we all have blinders on. And so, even me, I have a coach, I have 2 or 3 coaches, and one of them has a great podcast. And so, but being able to have someone speak into that gap and say, you're not seeing this part, or let's move you to here. And by doing that, I call it those coaches or those mentors or whatever you want to put a title to. It helps people trying to get somewhere to compress that time, because you're going to learn one way or another. You're either going to learn through experience or you're going to learn through others. And so being able to have people around you to compress that time, I think is valuable, especially when you're talking about business or really, self-improvement or any of those things. You can listen to, in the world we live in now, you can listen to podcasts, you can listen to, watch YouTube. I do that all the time. But there's something different about having someone that actually knows you personally and knows what you're actually trying to accomplish and can speak into that space. So I think that's probably been my big aha throughout this process. Is I do the same thing I did when I was in my late 20s. It's just it's a different industry, but it's the same process, the same framework. And it's, I don't think that much different as far as how to get someone from A to B. So
I love it. I just realized that I may, after all, become famous in Brazil if you're watching this. I know, but let's keep it real though. Our goal is to make sure that we're helping real estate agents. Meeting with Providence Title, we are a Texas agency, so we want to make sure that we're bringing extra value to those Texas realtors. You being a coach, do you think that every real estate agent out there is coachable and can become successful?
That's a great question, Carlos. So I think that everybody has the potential of being successful. I think we oftentimes, more than not, we get in our own way. One of the things I say is that everything we ever want is in the dark cave that we don't want to go into. Yeah. And it's our decision, ultimately, do we go into that cave and grab the thing? And so, when you go into that cave and you actually experience whatever the fear is, the pain that we have in our head is almost never the same as the actual experience. By the way, your future was calling from that dark cave. So right? They're like, come into the cave. Right now, for sure. So, and so I say that to say, I think everybody has the potential. I truly believe that. I just don't think everybody wants to go there. I think ultimately, and that's okay. Yeah. You hear this ad nauseum from me, but there's no judgment in the conversation that we have. I just want people to realize where they are and what they truly want, and if they're willing to actually go to that place, because most people don't want, everybody knows, right? Everybody in America knows that we should be healthier, that we should work out, that we should eat right. That knowledge is not the obstruction to the success. Everybody knows it, but yet most Americans have an issue with it, including myself. We like to eat we're here in Texas, right? It's the Mexican food. I had that last night. But the reality is we all know, it's just, do we want to go through that sacrifice to get the things that we truly want long term? And that's something that everybody has to individually answer for themselves. And so that's when I coach people, that's kind of where I take them is, let's get to that place where you can say, yes, I truly want to do this, or no, this is not the path that I actually want to take down. So I think this is a very romantic industry in a way, where it's really easy to get caught into the, hey, you can make as much money as you want for as little, right? Hey, minimum $2,000 a year. And all of a sudden you've got this opportunity, but it's not until you really get into it. And you have to have a little bit of maybe a business background and just kind of be willing to put in the work. Yeah. There's nothing in this world worth having without sacrifice. Yeah. whether you agree with that or not, it still doesn't make it untrue. And so we know that, if we want something and it's something worth having, that there's a saying, if you say yes to something, you say no to something else. Right. And it's that no part that we have a problem with. We want to say yes to this and yes to this. And life just doesn't work that way. And it's a hard lesson to learn. And we have to learn it every day. Mm-hmm. No one's perfect. Even the coach that coaches me fails at some of the things that he does. We all do. But it's learning how to fail less and how to have people in your life that are able to speak that truth into your life without being offended. I think that's one of the big ahas that I had when I got into business coaching and things like that, was I had to let people in. I had to let people actually tell me things that I didn't necessarily want to hear, and be okay with the fact that they had my best interest at heart. So that's why they're telling me. And that's a hard lesson for anybody to learn if they don't already have that in their world. I'll take an example. When I was a football coach, our boys used to run 40-40s every single Monday, 40-yard dashes. And the only time that separated those four, we did it in segments of 4. And the only time we did it was the only time that was allotted to them to rest was the time between the first group and the last group running. So it was like 10 seconds in between. And it was hard, right? And we knew it was hard as coaches. We didn't want to do it. But the reality was, the reason why we got so far and we had such success in football was the fact that we knew by putting that pain in that moment, what it would give us in the October and Novembers of the year. And that correlation is exactly the same in anything. When you're a realtor, if you want to call for sale by owners, you have to face the rejection over and over again until you get good enough that rejection is always going to be there, but it's going to get less, and it's going to get less painful because now you can start tying the success that you have behind it. And it's the same way in titles, same thing in anything. Business is business, no matter what industry it is. It's just the nuances of how you get business, how you get customers, and all those kind of things. But the framework of it is pretty much the same. So.
I'm beyond excited. I mean, the closing table podcast, I think there's just so much. Ultimately, we want to get you to the closing table, right? But there's so many aspects of that. Whether you're a brand new realtor just needing a little bit of guidance, maybe you're just don't quite know where to get it. We hope that we're going to be one of those options. Now, I think we're going to get to it in the future, but I'm really excited too of what you're building from a coaching platform and things that you can help those that are watching, maybe the real estate agents, or I don't know. Do you want to just share a little bit of that vision? Do we want to just tease?
Well, I will say that for years, one of the things that I noticed from having coaches and having the investment of coaching and seminars and going to events, those are all great. But there's a big segment of our population, our real estate population, and it's in every part of the industry where they haven't been able. They can't figure out the gap between where they are to being able to afford those type of events and afford that type of coaching. There's a gap that usually occurs, and very few are able to jump that gap. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they don't, I say things like they don't treat their business like a business. You can get in with such a small investment that it doesn't really feel like a business. It feels a lot more like, something that you're just going from commission to commission or deal to deal or closing to closing, whatever. And so until you start realizing that you have to invest in your business and actually run a business, most people have a hard time with that gap. And so for years, I've been trying to figure it out because I want to help people. But at the end of the day, we're all here to create our own world and create our own hero story. Part of almost everybody's hero story when they get into real estate, no matter what part of the industry they're in, is to be able to be financially not independent, but have a financial means to help whatever their family is, their vision, all those things. And so giving stuff away for free is often hard because there's a time commitment that you have to balance, especially as a coach. Well, the great thing about what we've done and what we've done as a partnership is that we're able to start building a program that, for the most part, is going to be at no cost to the real estate community. And it won't just be me. It won't just be you. It'll be a whole bunch of professionals that get together to raise the tide so all ships rise. And so I'm super excited about that for sure. We talk about it every day. And so this podcast is just it's going to be kind of a voice towards that. And we'll have a podcast, probably within the first 3 or 4 that we're actually going to talk about that a little bit more. But just being able to build it and being able to give it to the community in a way that we can help everybody ultimately become better professionals and become better business owners so that they can help those buyers and sellers with the biggest financial decision that they usually make. I think that's what's the exciting part for me, because ultimately it's a win-win for everybody.
I love it. Okay. If you had to think of probably your biggest lesson when you became a realtor year 1, maybe if we have brand new newbies watching that, what would that be? Can you think of one thing that I wish I knew that at the end of year 1?
I wish I knew it was harder than it actually seemed when I got in. We all come in, and we'll talk about this in another episode, but we all come in with a story in our head of what it is, right? During the past 3 or 4 years, we had a lot of realtors come in because they love Chip and JoJo, and I love the show, right? And I won't mention the show, but the reality is everybody knows who I'm talking about. And that was their thought of what real estate was going to look like. Right. And it can be, that can be an element of what we do. But the reality is it's hard work. And you have to put your head down and go to work. And the problem is we are terrible bosses of ourselves. And we usually don't have, most people come in the real estate industry and they've had a boss, or they've had someone who has controlled certain segments of their day. And for the most part, not everybody's this way, but for the most part, especially if you're starting your own business, no matter what part of the industry you're in, your boss is you. Unless you put things in place. And that's what we talk about in the coaching program. But because of that, we don't even know how to be a boss, much less a boss of ourselves. And so learning quicker that I needed people in my life to hold me accountable, even though I hated the word accountability, even as a coach, probably would have been the one thing that I wish I would have done quicker. And I had success my first year. I've had success every year, but I could have been a lot farther along down that learning curve if I'd have put people in place and just really took that seriously at the front end and not got caught up in the sizzle of getting a listing and selling a deal and getting a buyer and all this kind of stuff. You said something the other day and it really stuck with me. And I think it kind of ties back to that, because for people watching right now, they may be thinking, well, he's saying of people around me, and that maybe means, maybe you have to hire somebody or bring a coach. I think there's enough resources, partners out there just from an accountability standpoint. But you said something, so I want you to maybe repeat that. Does everybody need a coach? I think everybody needs a coach. Matter of fact, I know everybody needs a coach, whether they think they need a coach or not. And it's evident being a coach and being a coach's coach. When you study coaching and you study what it is, because coaching, just like anything else, real estate industry can have a bad name. A lot of people think of realtors as, if you're talking about realtors, you think of them, a lot of people think of us as, car salesmen, we're trying to get the commission, all those kind of things. And part of that can be true. But coach sometimes has a bad connotation of, I'm going to take your money or I'm going to take your time and I'm going to tell you what to do. And I may not necessarily know what you should do, but I'm going to tell you what to do anyway. But when you find a good coach and you find a good mentor and you find someone in your life, whether it's an associate, whether it's a title development rep who's willing to lean in and have those conversations, the big thing about coaching is, like I said, they see the blind spots you can't see. And one of the biggest examples I can say is in the sports world, there's not a single that I know of, and of course we're on the internet, so maybe someone will chime in and tell me different, but there's not a single person that has succeeded at the highest level that did not also have a coach. And I use the Dirk Nowitzki. We're from Dallas and Dallas Mavericks. He had a coach here, obviously, but then he would go back to Germany and have a coach that he's had since he was, a young man, that would just go in and teach him things that he didn't know, even though he was playing at the highest level of the sport. No one is without that blind spot. And so the quicker you learn it in life is the quicker you can start becoming that better version of yourself, that hero in your own story, because we don't know where to go because we've never been there. And so being able to have people that have either been there or know how to get you there is the moments that when you realize that and you realize that they're really trying to help you get to that, whatever that next spot is, that's when you really start moving down that story, and becoming that person you want to become. And I always say we all have that version of ourselves in our head that we wish we could be. Mm-hmm. And I've done hundreds of these. I've done hundreds of seminars where I've asked that question, and I can tell you without hesitant that less than 0.01% when I ask, are they that person now, that they actually raise their hand. We all have a place we want to go to, but most of us don't know how to get there. We wind up not going there because we don't know the path. And that's what coaches do. Yeah. Coaches and mentors, they help you down that path. So
we definitely want to get you there, guys. We want to just thank you for watching. I am Carlos Woltmann with Providence Title. You can find me at Carlos Woltmann on Facebook. You can find my contact information at protitletx.com. And he is the Kevin Harris. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Best way to get a hold of me is on Facebook. It's the Kevin Harris. On Instagram, it's the Kevin Harris 1. You can find me at thekevinharris.com. So it's easy. And so, we're super excited. It's our first one, and I always say this, Carlos laughs about it, but this is the best one we've ever done, and it'll be the worst one we ever do. So guys, I appreciate you leaning in, listening in, or watching on YouTube. And hopefully we'll give you content that helps you move down that road to being the hero in your own story. And we want you, if you're in Texas, we definitely want to be partners with you at Providence Title. So reach out to us. We'll get you connected, and we'll have a great time in this wild thing we call real estate.
And we will see you at the closing table.